hell are you supposed to be? I'm vengeance. Hello and welcome back to Gamebox, the show where we take a look at games of yesteryear. And today we'll be taking a look at a game from the PlayStation 3 era, a game that ended up changing the way we all look at comic book based games, a game that ended up making a combat system that stood the test of time, a little game called Batman: Arkham Asylum. Developed by Rocksteady Studios and published by Eidos Interactive and Warner Bros. Interactive. Now in the before times, the world viewed video games as a fun little place that people can go escape the real world with colorful worlds and happy characters. Yeah, sometimes not so much, but the same can be said of the subject of comic books, and some do get super dark. But what happens when you mix the two mediums? You get a product like what we're taking a look at today. In the early years, these types of games were seen in that bright color and happy kid-friendly light. But as the years went on, these games started to mature with its audience, whether it was basing them on more mature IPs or adding more action into these games. They do show some form of evolution, but even still, they had a specific feel to them. It wasn't until companies like Rocksteady tried to do something new. Rocksteady Studios was founded in 2004 by Jamie Walker and Sefton Hill, both who worked at Argonaut Games before its closure. Another interesting note is that Psy Entertainment was a founding investor in the young company. And who is that, you're asking? They would later go on to be renamed Eidos, the company that would go on to publish games like Fighting Force, the Kane and Lynch series, the Legacy of Kain series, even the Tomb Raider series. Rocksteady Studios' first release was Urban Chaos: Riot Response in 2006, a first-person shooter released on the PlayStation 2 and original Xbox. It received decent reviews for the most part. In 2007, Eidos Interactive obtained the rights to make a game based on the Batman IP, and it was Rocksteady who was charged in making a game set in the world of the Caped Crusader. During development, Rocksteady was given creative freedom on the project, not having to have the game based off a previously established story. Though it does share the name of Arkham Asylum, a serious house on serious Earth by Neil Adams, Frank Miller, and Grant Morrison, it wasn't a direct adaptation of the story, though it does take some elements from the work. It was also stated that BioShock was an influence on the game's design due to its atmosphere. Also, games like Legend of Zelda and Metroid also served as influence for Arkham Asylum. With the help of Paul Dini, Rocksteady was able to shape an original story for the game. And who was Paul Dini? Well, he is known for his work on Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, and Batman Beyond, even working on several animated films like Batman Mask of the Phantasm and Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. Mr. Dini also had worked on a good number of comics, including Batman Black and White Volume 2, Batgirl Adventures, Batman Arkham City, Batman Gotham Knights, Batman Harley and Ivy, Batman The Adventure Continues, Black Canary and Zatanna Bloodspell, Superman Peace on Earth, and Shazam Power of Hope, just to name a few. He even co-created one of the best Joker/Harley stories ever made, Mad Love, so safe to say, he knows his stuff. Early versions of the game was very different from the version that players eventually get their hands on. This version was originally envisioned to be a full-on rhythm game, where attacks had to be done on time of a beat. This version was scrapped and reworked to be the combat that was used in the final release, though this would still have a rhythm feel to it. There are also plans for sections involving taking control of the Batmobile and Batwing, though they were cut due to the amount of time and work they would have needed, which would have taken away from time in other parts of development. Arkham Asylum had been chosen as a location due to its proclivity to house many of Batman's rogues gallery. The design of Batman was influenced by the art of Jim Lee, as Joker's design was influenced by the version of the character that was presented in the graphic novel The Killing Joke by Alan Moore. Harley Quinn was redesigned the most, having her iconic red and black suit swapped out for a nurse-themed outfit. As for voice work, Rocksteady was able to get Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill, and Arlene Sorkin to reprise their roles as Batman, Joker, and Harley Quinn. Speaking of villains, there were quite a few that were planned to make an appearance, those being Mad Hatter, Mr. Freeze, and the Riddler. Though they were cut for various reasons, the only one who would have a minimal role in the game was the Riddler. Though Mr. Enigma would be present through his taunts to Batman, he would never actually make a physical appearance. Batman Arkham Asylum was released for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 on August 25, 2009 in North America, and on August 28, 2009 in Europe, and September 3, 2009 in Australia. It was also released for Windows on September 15, 2009 in North America, then on Mac on November 3, 2011 worldwide. And finally, the 3 main Arkham games were re-released on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One on October 18, 2016 worldwide. Reception for Arkham Asylum was very good, garnering high scores, even being called the greatest comic book game of all time by Greg Miller. And with that, let's take a look at today's game. Set right after the Batman has recaptured the Joker after a recent crime spree, Bats returns Joker to Arkham Asylum to be locked back up. But unbeknownst to the Dark Knight, Joker has his own plans. Upon his return to the madhouse, he is able to escape and gain control of the asylum, as well as the inmates within. Now it's up to Batman to recapture the Joker and find out what the Clown Prince of Crime has in store for Gotham.
Don't get too full of yourself, Dark Knight. It only gets harder from here.
Batman Arkham Asylum is a third-person adventure game. Now, there are 3 forms of gameplay. One is combat. As stated before, combat isn't a simple button masher, where the player over-relies on one combo to carry him through the game, like Batman carries DC. The combat has simple inputs. There's an attack, a dodge, a stun, and a counter. Short, simple, to the point. But it's not boring. In fact, it's definitely a case of easy to learn, hard to master. This was by design, as Rocksteady wanted a combat system that any type of player can pick up and go. Batman can use some of his gadgets in combat, but in this game the gadget involvement is minimal, unlike later installments in the series. Another thing to note is that with each successful hit without taking damage will cause Batman's combo counter to increase. This gives him the ability to perform more powerful moves and finishers. Even the camera is fantastic, as it dynamically moves around the battle, letting the player focus on dishing out piping hot whoopings. The second form of gameplay is stealth. It's here Bats will be locked in a room with a few gun-toting goons. Little do they know.
You seem to understand. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me!
In these rooms is where the player stalks his prey from the shadows and works on picking them off one by one. And these sections is where gadgets will come into play, more so than combat, as they can be used to set traps to take enemies out. In these parts, Bats can't take on these men head on. Well, he can, but more often than not, he'll be overwhelmed with the case of lead poisoning. But if he is spotted, all he has to do is zip up to a vantage point and out of view, in order to start the hunt all over again. The cool thing about this is that as the enemy numbers dwindle, the remaining goons will start to pair up in order to stop Bats from taking them out. With each enemy that is taken out, the remaining enemies will respond, and their fear will increase, leading them to act more erratically. In the later portions of the game, there are other obstacles Bats has to deal with, those being callers that alert surrounding enemies to let them know when you've taken one out, and booby-trapped vantage points. The final form of gameplay is exploration. Again, this is where the gadgets will come into play. This is also where the Metroid inspiration comes into play as well. When Bats gets his mitt on a new gadget, he's able to access more of Arkham Island, granting him access to more collectibles. Speaking of which, there are plenty of things for Bats to discover, as there are many things to find hidden away on the island. There are interview tapes, recordings that give a bit more backstory to some of the villains, chattering Joker teeth to smash, the spirit of Arkham slabs. These tell the tale of Amadeus Arkham. Riddles. These are riddles left behind by the Riddler. These are actually pretty neat, as plenty of them reference other characters in the Batman universe. And finally, Riddler trophies. These items, like the riddles, have been left scattered around the island by the Riddler, and it will be these items that will become the bane of my existence as the series goes on. Those goddamn Riddler trophies. But how does one find all these items? With the detective vision, of course. This mode lets Batman see items of interest, track NPCs, solve riddles, find Riddler trophies, as well as keep track of enemies during the stealth sections. Not only do these items add to Batman's collectible list, they also grant him XP, which in turn lets him upgrade his gear. This could mean upgrades to his overall health, or to unlock new moves, to even unlock abilities for his gadgets. As for bosses, now one would think that given that this takes place on an island that houses many of Batman's greatest enemies, this will lend itself to some sweet boss fights. Yeah? Well, not entirely. Now, don't get me wrong, the one's presence indeed do its job giving players exciting encounters, but it does feel like others were a bit of a waste. But then you got some awesome ones too. Another cool thing is all the boss fights have their own game over screen, where they taunt Batman for losing to them. Arkham Asylum, I feel, aged well. The character designs work well with mixing both realism and comic appeal, but the awesomeness doesn't stop there. As stated before, Rocksteady had brought on the voice actors for the animated series. This tickled the nostalgia glands for any Batman fan. The entire feel of Arkham Asylum had a darker tone than most players are used to. A lot of the architecture was fitting for each of the different areas, and they do fit well with the world that Rocksteady has created. The same can be said about the music, with very epic sounding tracks. They didn't want to copy any music that was from the movies or shows. It had a major orchestral feel. The sound design of the game was great as well. The hits felt hard, and mixing that with the fantastic music made for an excellent experience. Even the little things like the UI of the game had that cool comic design behind it, something that would be unfortunately ditched in later games in the series. I did encounter some minor glitches, nothing game breaking, more funny than anything really. Another cool thing is over the course of the story, Batman's suit would show battle damage. I don't know, just something I thought was neat.
You like cameras? Stick your head out so I can blow it off.
So, all in all, is this a game you need to go out and play? Yes. A hard yes. Batman Arkham Asylum is one of those games that took an audience by surprise. Maybe it was the story, the voice work, or the overall atmosphere of the madhouse, but the entire package won people over. With a very fun combat and equally fun stealth section, this is a game I feel people should try at least once. Hell, the combat will go on and influence other games, which isn't a bad thing. Those games did end up being very fun as well. Overall, I really enjoyed my run with this game. My only issue, a very minor one at that, was how Batman had the inability to run without holding down the X button, but that's more of a personal preference. Also, for some reason I couldn't get the DLC where we were able to play as a Joker to work, but like I said, very minor. Unfortunately, Arkham Asylum doesn't have a New Game Plus feature, so if you did want to replay the story, you have to start from scratch. But with just how great the story and gameplay are, it may be a non-issue for some. But if you just want to jump right into the action, there are challenge rooms the player can take a crack at and test their skills. The game definitely does its job, that being to make the player feel like the Dark Knight. So, if you can get jiggy with that, then I say give this one a try. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an asylum to save.
I can't believe he left me here. That son of a...
Justice. Hey, and welcome to the end of the video. I thank you for making it this far. I'm pretty excited to have a run at this series, as it's one I've been wanting to do for a while. The next game we'll be taking a look at is the next one in the series, and it was here that Rocksteady aimed to expand on the universe they had created for the Caped Crusader. But until then, you know what to do. Spread the awesome, and I'll see you next time.